Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here on, I think we're live. It's waking up. Yes, it is. Hey everybody, Dan Shinder here with Pat Bautz. Now, so, I gotta tell you, he's coming to us from Florida. I'm coming to you from Globe, Arizona, a tiny mountain town 100 miles east of Phoenix at about 4,000 feet. There's no one here, and that's why we're here. But I'm glad you're here with Pat and I. So Pat's been with Three Dog Night since 1993, but as you all know, if you follow the show, I do not use notes. But Pat has such a stellar line of credits, I decided to cheat a little bit today.
That's the word.
Yeah, stellar. And Pat said, just hit the highlights. And I look at this list, and it's like, I wouldn't know what to weed out. So here we go, and it's listed on the player, but work with me, folks. So here we go. So not only is Pat an awesome drummer, but he has a great studio called Real Drum Studio. He's a very accomplished engineer. And Pat, do you do production? Are you a producer as well?
I do some, yeah.
Great. And your credits include with either touring or recording or performing Dave Mason, Michael Johns, Livvi Franc, Jeffrey Osborne, Little Richard, Freddy Fender, Badfinger. I've heard a few of these so far. Nelson, Rodney Dangerfield, who had a killer speed metal band, just so you all know. Mickey Gilley, right?
Mr. Mellon.
Yeah. Everett Harp, Randy Meisner, Wanda Jackson, Stella Parton, Lincoln Center, the London Symphony, Atlanta Symphony, ABC Television, NBC, CMT, PBS, VH1, EIEIO, 2 Dove Awards, and a Grammy-nominated artist. Welcome to Drum Talk TV. And folks, I'm sorry we're late. We had a little bit of technical stuff on my end. Sorry about that. How you doing, Pat?
Good. I'm doing great.
Good. I gotta tell you, Three Dog Night. So we're almost the same age. I won't give that away. But when I was a little kid and I first started playing drums, I played for about 3 months before my parents said, you know what, we think he's going to stick with it. Let's get him a drum set. Before I had the drum set, I was playing the Three Dog Night records on my remote practice pad. So I can only imagine how much fun you're having playing all that legendary music from over the years, this wonderful body of music and the songs in the catalog. Do you have a favorite song, 2 or 3, that you look forward to playing the most when you're on tour with Three Dog Night?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, it kind of changes over the years. I mean, obviously, there's a blessing and curse to having a lot of hits. Yeah. The blessing is you can always get a gig. The curse is you have to play them all the time. So,
yeah.
You know, after you've played them for many years, I like this one right now, and then 2 years later, the other one becomes your favorite. You know?
Yeah, that's cool.
It does evolve. It does kind of rotate that way.
Yeah. What's really
right now?
Yeah.
What's my favorite song? I would say "Easy to Be Hard" is my favorite Three Dog Night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I enjoy playing that song in the aspect of the dynamics of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many other tunes that are just kind of, not that they're not dynamic, but they're kind of a one kind of style thing, or a one kind of level, play a groove 2 and 4 kind of thing.
Yeah.
At least it has a little lope to it.
Right.
That's slightly different, and there is some dynamics involved in it.
Right. I've always loved the groove to the original recording that Floyd Sneed laid down for Joy to the World, and that long drag, that rough that he plays, in the beat. And when I did finally get a drum set, that's like one of the first things I wanted to learn, because that beat just was so groovy. Like, I even felt that as a 7-year-old,
Yeah.
There's just so much great music. And for 26 years you've had this gig. What advice do you have for drummers and other musicians, but for drummers in particular, other than musically fitting in and having the chops and being musical and be able to play the material? What advice do you have for not only getting a gig, but keeping a gig for so long. That's a big feat. Getting it's one thing. Keeping it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 26 years, that's a lifetime career for most people in any industry.
It is, and then, I'm extremely lucky that happened for me. There, of course, as you said, you gotta get to a certain level of playing, but once you accomplish that level of playing, it's being able to simple things that people just sometimes a lot of musicians I have known in the past can't seem to get together, like showing up on time and just real simple things like that.
Yeah.
Help you keep a gig and not being an ass.
Yeah, for some people that's difficult.
It is. And not letting being flexible for the artist. So if somebody asked you to play a different fill, don't whine about it. Maybe it's not your favorite fill, but you play it, and that's what you do. I mean,
right. It's your job.
That, as a side guy, I mean, that's what you're paid to do, and that's what you do.
Right.
And you do it with a smile on your face.
Yeah, absolutely. Being flexible, adaptable, and
yeah,
doing the job.
I know a lot of guys when I was younger. I mean, I had that when I was younger kind of thing too, where, well, I know better. I know Billy Cobham wouldn't have done that, or I know Bob wouldn't play that lick, or, I know those guys wouldn't have played that lick. Well, no, you don't.
Right, that's true. That's a good point.
And you have to get over that.
Yeah.
Let that go. And you have to play what's required. As Danny Hutton, the founder of Three Dog Night would say, serve the song. And that's really what you have to do.
Right. And what I love about that concept is that surfing the song doesn't always mean playing completely simplistically, but it does mean surfing the song, whatever that means for the song.
Does. No, you're correct. It's not just playing 2 and 4 necessarily through every tune.
Yeah.
It's about setting up choruses really well, bringing stuff down in verses where it belongs, just things like that, making some little interesting changes, maybe in a hat groove or a kick groove to make it slightly interesting, even though the listener's not really sure why it's interesting, but it is more interesting.
Yeah.
It's not really sure. It just feels a little different for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you tour year after year after year, how much consciously do you or the band as a whole decide to put a different spin on some different songs so it's not only fresh for you as the performers, but for the people that come see you year after year, where it's what they expect but might have a little different twist to it?
Yeah, that's a hard thing. I hear. I see a lot of other bands doing shows, and it's a hard thing to put a spin on it without going too far. Some guys take it too far, and it becomes, because the one thing that I really like to hear is when people go, "Hey, man, it sounds just like the record." Well, that's really what you intend it to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to take it so far that it doesn't sound like the tune anymore.
Right.
It's like you're doing a version of the song.
Right. The live version.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about the guy who's paying his hard-earned money to come see you play.
Right, and they have expectations of what they heard on the albums from the 60s and early 70s.
Or whatever. I mean, no matter what artist you are.
Right.
When somebody pays their money and they and you sound totally different from your record, that may not be a good thing for them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Be happy about that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to let everybody know, if you have questions for Pat, I will check the comments in just a little bit. We'd love to know if you have some insightful questions as well. I'm not the only interviewer here. We're going to let you folks participate. And Pat, when I look at this long list of the many different artists that you've played with, is there one, whether it's Three Dog Night or one of the other experiences, whether it's doing television, film work, whether it's working with someone like Rodney Dangerfield all the way to Randy Meisner, is there an experience you had that really sticks out with an artist, that you learned something from that experience that you have carried with you as a professional musician in the business since you learned that, whatever it was, whether it was something musical or something on the business end, something on the production end, how to conduct yourself, anything at all?
Well, yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think I always learned something from just about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about Rodney Dangerfield. So I'm living in Houston at the time. I want to say this was probably 1983 or 82, and I get hired to play his show at the, I can't even remember the theater. It's a Spin and Sweat. It's a theater in the round that rotates.
Yeah.
I get hired to play in the Pit,
Uh-huh.
and I think it's 2 nights, maybe it might have been 2 nights or 3 nights. I'm just trying to remember at the time.
Sure.
And my friend Shay Tinnerow called me up. He was contracting the gig, and I had never ever worked behind a comedian before.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I thought they just kind of winged it every night.
Right.
I didn't get the fact. I was in my early 20s, so
Yeah.
I didn't really get the fact that they said the same thing every night.
Yeah, it's like a concert.
It made it sound like they just made it up,
A whole different thing every night.
Yeah, that's what and so there was these lines written out. We read charts when he came on stage and when he went off stage, but there was these lines written out, and then it would say bass drum.
Uh-huh.
On the line, and so it's on the word, and Rodney would move his rear end when you'd hit the bass drum, or it'd go cowbell, and I remember going, wow, this guy actually practices this stuff. Well, just the prepared thing, I guess I would have learned from a guy like Rodney.
Yeah,
He
it's
was
interesting.
so prepared and so precise. Every show I ever played with him, I was shocked.
That's great.
And then I realized that's what made him good.
Yeah.
Is that he was able to pull that off and make you believe that he was just making it up.
Right. It was so organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was such a
so
talent.
that I don't know, that's something I thought that I can think of at the moment.
Great.
If I think about it long enough, I'll probably come up with something else. But that's the immediate one I think of.
Great. I'm going to peek at the comments real quick, and let's see who's on board and who might have a question. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot of people watching. No questions so far. If you think of something, everybody, go ahead and throw us a question. Hey, Joe Tapia, Michael Shaft. Hey, Jason. Juan, how are you? People from right here in Arizona, believe it or not, and the Philippines, Canada, all over. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if you have a question for Pat. Since you are such an accomplished engineer and you do production work and you have a full-blown studio, I love that term, full-blown studio, as opposed to a halfway inflated studio.
I'm sitting in the studio as we speak. So here,
awesome
audio console.
What is that?
That's an SSL AWS.
Awesome. Yeah.
I can't see what you're seeing, so
I see the outboard gear there in the rack and the patch bay.
Goodies, there's that.
Great.
Hang on here. Let me.
Sure. We'll get a little tour of the studio here. Oh, nice.
Wait, I think I have a. Here, I'll take you with me.
Okay, great. Hang on, everybody. Here we go.
So, here's the live room.
Nice.
Yeah. That's a Yamaha kit in here.
Nice. Shout out to Yamaha.
Yeah, it's a Yamaha recording.
Awesome.
Kit in here. I think I was doing a a voiceover dub the other day, so there's an 87 set up.
Great.
I was doing either voiceover dub or a vocal. There's another vocal booth. You can see it through the front.
Right through there. Yeah.
And then there's some storage. So that's the fun part.
Storage is important.
I'm sorry?
Storage is important.
Oh, of course.
That's great.
And I'm shutting off lights. Yeah, so I really enjoy working with different artists or up and coming artists.
Uh-huh.
I don't necessarily play on.
You don't. Oh, okay. So you don't do tracking.
I mean, I track for people, but there's a lot of young drummers that come in that are great players that I that we work on, get some really good drum sounds. I've got a bunch of snare drums. We'll go through and pick some snare drums. I have 3 or 4 different kits we can choose from.
Nice. What's the arc of genre that you work in your studio as far as music genres?
Oh boy,
is it pretty much anything goes?
It could be a lot of different things. There's like some, not necessarily, but kind of all alternative pop artists, to country artists, to
grunge metal speed polka.
Oh, I like that. No.
Banjo with a whammy bar.
Yeah, you just never know.
That's cool.
My area is, Florida, the coast. We're right by the Space Center.
Right.
So Florida has like a thing where there's a lot of like what I call Florida reggae bands. So there's kind of like it's kind of a beach reggae is maybe what I would call it.
Yeah, and you got Junkanoo music down there too.
Yeah, kind. I mean, there's a lot of variations of music down here. Believe me.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go further south to Miami, you got tons of Latin music and
right.
Florida is real varied in its musical tastes.
That's killer. So why?
If you go inland, upstate a little bit, you'll hear a lot of banjo music. Not necessarily a good idea sometimes when you're out in the woods by yourself. But,
Why is it that, in my experience, drummers seem to make really good producers and really good engineers? I've seen this common denominator before. I worked for a long time as a producer, producing and writing and voice casting and voice directing radio commercials, soundtracks for industrial films and things like that. But I'm not using me as an example. When I think of people like yourself, all the way to Phil Collins, all the way to Alan, I mean, it goes on and on and on. What is it about being a drummer that also seems to translate to being a good producer and engineer? Is it a timing thing? Is it all because of the timing element we possess?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of great producers.
Sure.
And I mean, if you look at the vast majority of them, I'm sure they're not drummers, but
right.
What was I watching the other day? I was watching a Timbaland thing. Have you seen his master class on beatboxing and producing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how he starts his productions. It's like by beatboxing into a mic to a click, and he does like a loop and then goes back and actually layers drums over the top of the beatbox. It's very interesting the way he works. And so he does come from like a drumming foundation, you know? So if you look at it that way, I mean, if you're making a record and you really want it, most records you want it to make people move, make people dance, and that's really the basis of your production,
right?
Is to make people want to do something instead of just sit there and listen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, and that's okay. That's an answer.
Kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just peeking over at the comments real quick to see if anyone else has questions. I'll keep an eye on that. Oh, here's one. This is great because I was going to ask this. So let me just scroll up so I can see exactly who's asking it. There we go. So Rick Fernandez. Rick, where are you watching from? Rick says, can you give us a rundown of your Three Dog Night kit for all the gearheads like me? And me. Oh, yeah, give us a rundown of what you take on tour.
I have, I'm a huge fan of 1980s Yamaha recording series drum kits. So we have 3 sets of our gear. I mean, we do bus and we pull a trailer, obviously, which a lot of bands do. Mm-hmm. I have one of my kits in there, but then we have there's a company called Jonas Productions that has one in Vegas and another one in Indy, and so like this week, tomorrow I fly to. I forget where I'm playing, in Wyoming somewhere, I think.
Okay.
And then we'll be on the bus from there. Then we play Denver the next day. Then we hop on a plane the next morning and fly to Phoenix. Well, we can't drive that far from Denver to Phoenix in the time allotted to be able to play the next show. So the gear is somebody's driving the gear from Vegas to Phoenix. Yeah. Well, I'll fly in and I'll have one of my other kits there.
Cool.
But I play 4 toms usually, which is a 10, 12, 14, 16. Mm-hmm. I always use I don't know, for probably, I hate to say how long. I've been using Emperors.
Okay.
I'm an Emperor guy.
Cool.
A 22-inch kick, Black Beauty snare drum, 6.5. Zildjian K's. I'm a Vic Firth guy, so I use Vic Firth sticks, my favorite sticks.
Cool. And what are the shells?
Those are maple.
Cool.
Those are maple shells.
Awesome.
I'm pretty sure.
I believe that's correct for recording series.
I say that I think about it. Yeah, the old 80s ones are, because they came out with what did they come out with later on? They came out with like a birch kit.
Birch. Yeah.
They came out with like a birch kit. I never played one of those.
I got a quick story. I played the very first Yamaha kit that was released in the United States. I was on tour. I was 15 years old, playing drums for a singing group called Spirit of America. And we toured from Los Angeles to Long Island and back a different way, mainly playing state fairs. And we opened for Heart, Blue Oyster Cult, Seals and Crofts, a few others in the Osmonds. And this was at the Iowa State Fair, and we played, and the Osmonds were coming on like 3 hours later. It was hot, it was humid, and after we played, I decided to just run across the big lawn. Well, I intended to just walk across this big lawn to the concession stand to get a cold soda. And this guy, like maybe 30 yards behind me, was like yelling, "Hey, kid!" And I'm all alone, 15, and this big guy starts running after me, and I'm like, a little worried, so I thought, if only I could make it to the Pepsi stand. I get to the Pepsi stand, I'm shaking. "Kid, are you all right?" Yeah. I think this guy's chasing me. "Give me a Pepsi, please." He gives me a Pepsi. The other guy slams against the counter, and he holds his hand out, and he says, "Hey, kid, you were really good. My name is Sam Foster. I'm the drummer for the Osmonds. Would you like to come backstage and see my setup?" And I said, "Yeah." So he says, writes a note, and he says, "Give this to the security guy at the gate." So half an hour later, I go, I give it to the guy, leads me up to Sam's dressing room, where he has a Yamaha drum kit. So at the time, I'm racing Yamaha motocross motorcycles. Yamaha drums? This is a weird dream. What's this all about? And he explained that he had the first two kits that were landed in the U.S. One was on stage, the other was in his dressing room. And so this was the summer of 1978. And then it just, they took off from there, and they've been doing pretty well.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, but that was pretty neat to see something that was like the first of, and then to see how massively big they got and all the artists they've got. I mean, yourself, Dave Weckl, Steve Gadd, Tommy Aldridge, it goes on and on and on and on. Great artists. So nice company there.
Yeah, they my theory as an engineer is you can slap an Emperor on a Yamaha tom and tune it badly and throw a Sennheiser MD421 on it through a decent pre, and it sounds great even if you can't tune a drum.
That's great. I love that. That says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some drums you have to really finesse the sound out of them to get them to sound good.
Yeah.
It seems like anything. I don't think I've ever heard a bad sounding set of Yamahas, and of course, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. Sometimes it's the player that's hitting them.
Yeah, and how they have it.
The way they hit them, the way they tune them, that kind of thing. But I just haven't really heard a bad set.
That's cool. And on that note, no pun intended, as a drummer and as an engineer who spends time getting sounds, how much time, or what's the word? How much do you put into using the bottom head when it comes to tuning the drum for the batter side and the overall sound of the drum? Do you work much with the bottom head?
Well, it's the bottom head is the resonator, so it is basically the pitch of the drum that you're really looking for, the purity of the pitch. I mean, you can play with the interval between the top and the bottom head. Mm-hmm. And if you get them close to this, the closer you get them in pitch, the deader the drum becomes.
Right.
Until you get them the same pitch, so you can change the sustain of the drum. I mean, I keep my top heads with not a lot of tension on them.
Oh.
Because what I'm playing doesn't necessarily call for me to do a lot of reboundive kind of things on the tom.
Right.
So it's more of a striking kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then I get the resonation from the bottom of the head. So that's pretty much my philosophy of, I guess we'd call it old guy pop drumming.
Yeah, there you go. And do you have the same heads on the bottom, the same Emperors?
No, those are. I have Ambassador clears on the bottom.
Okay, cool.
Emperors are a little too thick and they deaden too much. Yeah. And then the Diplomats are too thin. They sound too flappy to me.
Yeah,
and they sound too
almost plasticky.
Yeah, kind of. I just don't like that sound.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, probably 1982, doing a session at a studio in Houston called Rivendell, and they had some Yamaha concert toms, I remember, in the booth, and they would stick 421s up in the drum.
Yeah.
And they isolated really well. They sounded great.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
Yeah. I, believe it or not, have no bottom heads on any of my drums. And this is because in 1983, it's a pretty big kit. And for those of you that watch my almost daily vlog, that kit you see, the blue kit, is probably half my kit. I play a lot of progressive rock, but I've got about a third or half my kit set up. But back in 1983, I wanted to paint them all, and I mixed this blue that you would see on the kit, and I sent them out to get painted, and they came back the wrong color. But I had a recording session that week, so I told my tech and myself just put on. I said, Mike, let's just put on the top heads and just get it to the studio. And so they sounded really well. So we took the top heads on, and I said it'll be less work. We sent them off. They came back the right color, and I said, let's just put the tops on. And that's been since 1983, and they still, to me, they sound great. I love drums that ring out, have a lot of resonance and sustain that are very melodic, and they've held up from 8 to 20 inches. They sound really good. I know it's so old school, and some people watch my vlogs every week during the week, and some people say, why no bottom heads? And my answer is, why not? They sound okay to me.
Yeah. Now, what kind of kit is it?
So the nucleus of it is a 1979 Tama Imperial Star, except for the snare. That's actually the snare drum from that kit up there. But I have a hammered brass Phoenix Drum Company snare that I just love. It's extremely versatile. So the drums are a combination of a 5-piece Tama Imperial Star, a 1970 5-piece Pearl, except without the snare, and then 2 small Slingerland concert toms, and then I have 2 Slingerland timpani drums from 1959 that I'm only the second owner of. And I didn't paint those, but I had all the other drums painted to match. And they're all maple, and the Tamas are 9-ply, and the Pearls are probably 5, because this is back in 1970, my first drum set, the Pearls. And they sound great. They sound really good. And I play everything from, something a little heavier, like Zeppelin, all the way to stuff that has a lot of finesse, like Yes and Genesis and some ELP, and a lot of that doesn't have finesse. And it just seemed to have the right sound for me. And I'm actually having a jazz kit right now being made for me out of rosewood. And those will have bottom heads. And it'll be like revisiting something that I haven't done in a long time. That's tune a drum with 2 heads. It's been a while. So it's just a little different. I know, it's a little quirky, a little different.
The thing that sometimes is extremely, I don't want to say tricky, but difficult about tuning a drum with 2 heads is, well, there was a joke in there, but I won't do it. But if you have even the slightest warp in a rim, or the bump in a bearing edge, it's almost impossible to make them sound great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes down to why craftsmanship is so important with drum making. Yeah,
I don't move my studio kits. I don't move them at all, really. I'll move one out, carefully move it. I have like a WFL kit, and
cool,
and a couple of things like that I'll stick out there, and different snare drums. But now the Rode is a whole different bag, as far as stuff getting. The Black Beauty that I have on stage, I didn't even know it, but I guess somebody had dropped it on the strainer, the whole side of it in, and I was like, man, this snare drum sounds funky. And then the tech took it off and went, well, that's because it's shaped like an egg.
Oh, goodness. Wow, that's crazy. But, so here's a good question from somebody. Where did it go? Here we go. This is from Randy Browning. Randy, thank you. Before you were with Three Dog Night, were you a fan of Floyd Sneed and his playing? Were you real familiar with their work and his playing?
I did know Floyd's playing some. I did not. Interesting. So we'll go to my buddy who is a really good friend of Jeff Beccaro's. So, Jeff was a huge Floyd Sneed fan, and he often talked about the King Solomon thing and what's that groove that he always. Anyway, and that was a Floyd Sneed. That's a Three Dog Night kind of a Floyd Sneed song that they did on, I don't know which record that was, but and often gave Floyd credit for that. And so that's really where I first had. I mean, I knew his playing, but I didn't know who it was until I heard Jeff mention his name one time.
Interesting. And of course, he did great work with Ohio Players as well.
Yes.
So really great stuff.
And I see Floyd every once in a while. He is the nicest cat you're ever going to want to meet.
Yeah, I've spoken to him a few times, and we've tried to get him on, and our schedules have just been. If I remember right, he lives in Pasadena.
Yeah,
that area. I think
he does now. Yeah, I saw him. Oh, maybe this last year, and I think it is Pasadena.
Yeah,
I know we talked about that.
I think that's where he's at. I'm going to reach out to him again. And let me take another look.
He did some interesting things when he played. He did a lot of that stuff between the rim and the bottom of the hat kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That he would like almost get like a Clyde Stubblefield thing going on.
Yes, exactly what I was going to say. Exactly.
Kind of a Stubblefield thing, and so Floyd had some very interesting grooves that he could produce.
Yeah, and had a unique kit.
Never even thought about.
Yeah, and he had a unique kit for back in the day. I don't remember or know if I knew what he played with Three Dog Night, but with Ohio Players, he had an early acrylic kit out there, and I
did with Three Dog as well. Some, yeah.
Okay, and I think it might have been by Fives. I think
it was a Fives kit.
Yeah, and the only other people I've ever seen with that brand and acrylic was Billy Cobham had that early on, and Nick Mason of Pink Floyd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I saw Billy Cobham at an NAJE, National Association of Jazz Educators convention. 1976, playing with Ron Carter was playing bass.
Yeah.
Cobham was playing the North drums.
Yes, yeah. He had the two big North drums out the side with the Fives kit, right?
Yeah, Rich Madison playing euphonium, I think it was.
Yeah.
Bill Watrous would come up and play. It sounded great. The toms were not my favorite sound out of that North kit.
Really?
Cobham just played his tail off. Man.
Yeah, he's still an amazing player.
I totally influenced me watching him play. Made me go home and just cry.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know whether to work on your technique or burn your kit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another question. This is from Ashish in Nepal, and he's asking for snare drum, what type of tuning do you prefer? And why? And that's kind of a broad question, Ashish, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to add to your question. And everyone's real good at correcting me if I'm wrong on this show. But I think maybe he means, do you like it to be real alto soprano? Do you like it to have some body? Do you like it to be real crisp? What do you go after for your snare sound?
Well, it really depends on the genre.
Yeah, let's say for Three Dog Night, for what your touring kit is. Yeah,
it's kind of I like something that cuts through, and that shows you where the groove is.
Yeah,
and lets you feel where the groove is. Of course, I have to work in conjunction with the front of house guy because he ultimately shapes the sound that I get out front. I mean, I can, by adding maybe some 200 hertz, he's going to get more, it's going to get tubbier. The snare drum's going to get a little tubbier. It's going to add that low resonance kind of thing. By adding some, 1.5K, you're going to get that pretty much attack thing. By adding some 10K, you're going to get that real nice kind of airy top end snare thing. So he really does shape that out there, but for me, I like to have a medium kind of tuned snare drum for this gig. Nice. I do use a 6.5, so that lends itself to the lower ending kind of sound thing. But
absolutely,
you can tighten that top head up a little more. And it gives it a nice pop, and I'm really kind of in a pop situation like this, I'm really kind of a rim shot guy, as opposed to being a center of the head kind of guy.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm just peeking real quick. I have one last question. And folks, if you've watched this on the archive and you have other questions, go ahead and throw them in. And if I see that there's some new questions over the next couple of days, I'll send you a link to this to remind you, hey, cruise through the comments. There's more questions. My last question is a Pat Bautz fun fact. When you're not working on music, what do you like to do?
Gosh. If I had a second, I'd go get him. I have a beautiful wife.
Uh-huh.
I like to hang out with her.
Great.
And
That's
I
important.
have a beautiful furry little puppy
Aw.
named Rosie. Anybody who hangs out on my Facebook page.
That's great.
So I hang out with those guys.
Cool. That's perfect.
We love to travel. Even though I travel all the time, I come home. My wife is a flight attendant, so we jump and go to, maybe Paris or something.
Nice. That's great.
So that's really what I do. Oh, speaking of that, here's my furry friend Rosie.
Aw, look at Rosie, everybody. So cute. Now I hear echo on my end or your end. I'm not sure. My voice. Sorry.
Well, I'm not hearing it, but there's Rosie, and my wife won't come in here because
she's shy.
I don't agree. Yes.
Let me see if my furry friend is real close by. I'll be right back, everybody. Hold on.
Say hello to everybody, Rosie. Right there. Say hi. I like to listen to drums. Yep. So just so everyone knows, Rosie does not get scared by music or drums. She doesn't get scared by much. She is a King Charles Spaniel. She is almost 4 years old. Obviously, she likes me because she licks me a lot. And she's going to get fidgety because I'm holding her up. And she travels well, too. Let's see if we can... if anybody has a... Rosie's a tricolor, but there's a few different colors. If anybody has one, everybody knows what a King Charles is.
Oh, darn. She's not nearby. I have a cat about the size of your dog.
Yeah, Rosie's like 15 pounds.
That's what she is. My cat is a Maine Coon, and she's enormous.
Oh, that's a big cat.
Yeah, but I don't know where she is.
I'm getting kisses here already.
Aw, that's great. Well, hey, Pat, hang on the line after we say goodbye. I want to thank you so much for taking time, and I want to thank you very much for putting up and being patient with the technical difficulties we had for half an hour before we got started. And thank you, everybody, for watching and joining Pat and myself.
Yeah, man, thanks.
Absolutely.
Come see us at the show.
Go see Pat. Look up the tour itinerary on the Three Dog Night website.
ThreeDogNight.com.
Check it out. Yep, legendary music. If you're young and you've never heard of them, go check it out. It'll be amazing, I promise. And we really appreciate you following what we do here on Drum Talk TV. And we'll be back again another time with Pat. And Pat, hang on the line. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.